It's a pleasure to welcome you to the first webinar in our 2026 series. We are very pleased to have participants join us from different countries, which continue strengthening our international dialogue on school climate, violence prevention, and educational transformation. It's an honor to introduce today's speaker, Dr. Esperanza Espino, who will present Family Matter Research on Prevention, Cyberbullying, and Promote Safe Internet Use. Dr. Esperanza holds a PhD in psychology from the Universidad de Sevilla, where she began her teaching and research career. She is currently a professor in the area of developmental and educational psychology at the Department of Psychology at Universidad Loyola Andalucía, where she served as academic coordinator for the psychology area. She's completed her doctoral study with the support and FPU fellowship work by Ministerio de Ciencia e Innovación in Universidades as a member of the research group Interpersonal Aggression and Social and Emotion Developmental, under the supervision of Professor Rosario Del Rey. She defended her doctoral dissertation entitled Acoso Escolar e Ciberacoso, con implicación, established factor explication. Received the distinction of sobresaliente cum laude with international mention. Congratulations, Esperanza. Before we begin, I would like to share a few brief introductions. The presentation will last approximately 20 minutes, and afterward we will open the space for questions and discussion. Dr. Esperanza, thank you very, very much to being with us today, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Dr. Adriano. Hi everyone. Buenos días, buenas tardes, según la zona en la que esté.
So it depends on your time zone. Good morning or good afternoon. It's a pleasure for me to being able to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation. So thank you very much. As I was saying, for the invitation and the opportunity, I would like to share this webinar, the progress and reflections that we have been able to, gather with our team throughout the years, and how with this advancements of our research has gone from a more specific to a more holistic perspective, and you'll see about this later. So in this session, I'm going to talk about our studies and what does the family perspective incorporate in the face of cyberbullying, and most recently the use of internet and social networks and social media. I would like to start with this question, which was, what was the role of families in the face of the use of technology years ago? And why does this question arise? It's because when we had electronic devices, they had a characteristic that was different from today, that so because there was this thing that we needed to get this technical domain, how to learn how to use it. Especially at that time, we started to care about the time of connection. Now, if we ask this question today, if we reflect, have we changed in family practices? Because today, the domain that we need is not only technical, but we also need to learn how to use it ethically, safely, and responsibly. And in particular, if we think about adolescents or teenagers, nowadays, electronic devices and specifically social media are used almost as a necessity, not only as an option. If we talk to teenagers and young people, they, confirm that social media and virtual environments are key to their socialization, to communicate, to interact with their peers, it's one of the most important forms of communication. And of course, they present many benefits, but there are some risks that are there and that we have to take care as families. So in this point, I would like to talk about cyberbullying as one of the phenomena that we have been, researching in the last years in detail. If I'm correct, probably in the first studies, 2003, cyberbullying appeared as between peers and virtual contact as part of the school extension from the point of view that we have studied, which is the one that we have analyzed the most. And also in different perspectives and different moments. And what do I mean with this? We have analyzed cyberbullying in its origins, in its implication or intensity. We have also analyzed cyberbullying regarding its impact. And we also have analyzed cyberbullying in terms of how we deal with it or coping mechanisms. So not only from personal variables, but also contextual. And this is where an important contextual variables, especially family, have a very important role. They're a key part of the development of socialization in this age. So I say it in this way because throughout the last years, we have tried to delve into and analyze in detail cyberbullying and its multiple perspectives. And here's where I'm going to start sharing some of the findings associated to the role of family. And the first study that I share with you that was able to develop with the professor Rosario del Rey, Antonio Casas, and Mo. And we had a sample of young people from 11 to 18 years old. And we're talking about parental supervision, follow-up, and the use of adequate use of technology. So the level of cyberbullying and victimization, and you can see there how supervision reduces this, and it's directly related. So at the same time, we were asking about the emotional impact. What does it mean that victims that are implicated and people implicated have one consequence and others have other types of consequences? So an interesting thing here is that parental supervision helps us to explain the less or the lower impact, and it had to do with lower levels of being angry, and anger and depression. And here's one of the keys that would help us to make a progress. It has to do with what we call the active impact. So the higher the level of supervision, people or victims felt more prepared to overcome this. So we understand that not necessarily these aspects have to come from the problem, and we have to strengthen their support network, and that's how we moved into a study where we consider another variable that was related to the family, that was the perception of family support. You can see here in this model how we were able to analyze, the role of, family support, and with variables such as, self-knowledge, self-awareness, or responsible decision-making. And what we were able to find in this study, it kind of, it had difference between, it just worked for girls and not for boys. So we were trying to figure out how we had to, adjust this in terms of, gender differences, or maybe girls were, more willing to seek help, or different variables. So the thing here with parental support is not just the existence of the cyber bullying or cyber red, but explicit actions like support messages, actions that are specific and tangible of support. So when they perceive this support is key in the continuity of this phenomenon, because if it's something that happens through the screen, it can be, if the family can, take a second role or a secondary role, they might not, be aware of what's happening if there's not like an evident, clue. That it is that communication, with young people. So right now, after giving some strokes about the family's role in the emotional impact and engagement and coping with cyberbullying, I think it's appropriate that we delve into the concept of digital parenting, and the concept of this 3P. Understanding that in the digital area, the parenting needs to be positive, so we have to strengthen 3 family characteristics. And the first, presentiality. This means in-person action or presence. It means that the family is present in the contact with the screens. It's not only supervising, but as age advances and is coherent, such as challenges and opportunities, it is a channel through which families can offer support and have that communication, that face-to-face communication. Along with this other one, this one has to do with age appropriateness, and it's a criteria of progressiveness. Nowadays we need to be respectful of cognitive needs, and so there's not a negative impact on development. So we need to have certain guidelines, and this is what leads to the third aspect, which is what we would call it's permissibility. It doesn't mean to be in excess tolerant in excess. This means to set boundaries, clear limits on what you can do or you cannot do. So we need these norms. So the guidelines that we were talking about have any value. We would like to, share advances in research and about evidences in Spain, and this is probably one of the most relevant studies that have been, socialized. The last edition in 2021 about digital parenting, we started to have some data in a very big representative sample of more than 41,000 young people, and we can see here in a descriptive way how teenagers that did not perceive norms or boundaries regarding technology use were more engaged or implicated in digital risks and problematic use of the internet and social media. So we can see here the difference between the blue graphs that it's where there are no boundaries, and the other one that is with clear limits. If we move forward in data, we see how we've been able to make progress in the understanding. One of the achievements was to broaden or expand the sample to more than 70,000, and also in age. So now we're not from 10 to 20 and not 11 to 18. And here it's like specifically what do families do? So what is it perceived? And these are like 1 out of 2 teenagers say that their family talks to them about the risks of the internet and how to prevent them. Or 1 in 3 perceive that there are explicit norms and boundaries regarding how long they can spend online. online playing, for example. So, despite the diversity of options, majority situates in less than 30%. Here we have some digital challenges that have diversified. See, we have here the theoretical framework of different, if we analyze like phenomena separately, but digital risks have diversified. We want to understand them in a holistic way and give a comprehensive answer to this. And this theoretical framework proposed by Sonia Linston and her team, and proposes this. And we're going to see that the risks are from different types. One is, behavioral risks, has some aggression levels, and we can situate here cyberbullying here, but there are other risks. For example, content, for example, pornography, or content, regarding commerce and contracts. I can do, gambling, online bets and gaming, and risk associated to third parties that are, like grooming and, other people with sexual interests. So it's very varied. And so one of the question is, as families, how have we changed? Are we at risk of being obsolete, in the face of this, risks? If we do not, here's where we are right now. This is the trajectory of the research. We want to have a more holistic perspective. And when we, started to explore the data that we gather with this new research, with Professor Rosario del Rey Alamillo and Professor Joaquín Mora Merchan, the idea is that safe use and nonviolent use of social media in teenagers, and analysis of the associated factors with the family variable that has great protagonism here. We want to look for a more global, vision, but also more specific in terms of what we're analyzing. Regarding cyberbullying, I share data about the role of parental supervising and the role of family support. And now we touch on other variables such as digital literacy, active mediation, revelation, and they're deeply connected to this. When we talk about a more holistic perspective, we started working a concept that has to do with the unsafe use of internet and social media. That has to do, that go beyond, connection times. It's been very used in science, problematic use of internet, excessive use. But now we think it's important to understand the ways, forms of use, because the data is demonstrating it already. It's not only the screen time, but also the types of use, the forms of use. So we could integrate cyberbullying and other risks that we have mentioned. I'm going to present some of the preliminary data and others that we have been able to, end or finish or propose in a more complete way. If we ask the families, and we've had, 505 families regarding their perception of existence of a digital risk related to the four C's, we see that families acknowledge or recognize more and better those that are more, well known, like fake news and, other misleading information, cyberbullying, and the body shaming and cyber hate. But for example, loot boxes or gambling or online bets are less known. But if we ask, in any case, if we ask the families about the lack of their information and who are the responsible ones who are responsible for educating them, we have to say that in their favor, they believe that they are the most important responsible factor, but they do believe they share the responsibility, for example, with teachers, their educational community, and technological companies. So they assign certain responsibility, for example, to how technological companies they can, being a part of, social media formats. And here I can offer the results of this part that we already finished, and that is part of Blanca Rubio's thesis. She's part of the research team, in which we have analyzed the relationship between screen time or connection time and general well-being and perception of your life, and some loneliness feelings, and because of the ways or forms of internet use, and attending to also contextual variables that are part, on one hand, the family and the peers on the other side. Here we're centering in the family role. We have introduced what we call spontaneous revelation variable, and it has to do with the openness of teenagers to share their life with their family. And here we can see this revelation, basically balances or mitigates the connection time or screen time. So this revelation and relationship with their family competes with screen time and other items such as the approval of the use of internet and or prevention of violence. And so in this way the role of the family is very important, and sometimes we know revelation is not going to arise in a spontaneous way, and we need other factors for it to happen. So here's where we have proposed how do we combine other variables associated to family mediation. The other thing is to make an analysis that are centered on the person, and so we have a very broad sample. We know that the use of technology varies with age, since the initial group was from 11 to 18. We have now separated them in group to early teenage years, medium, and later. We can share some in these profiles. We can share some preliminary results, because from 10 to 12 years we have 4 profiles. We see in the pink line, it's one of the profiles that has the half of the sample. It can be the profile with a high detection level. It has to do with protection and spontaneous revelation. We can see that the second profile has a lot of revelation, but it has low levels of supervision, but there's a lot of explicit support before facing problems and other difficulties. So active mediation has a very important role. And then when we have, what is, supervision, and, mediation, is boundary settings, being very intentional. They tell me, what do I have to do with someone, bullies me on the internet, and encouraging them to tell what happens at a general level. What are you doing? How are you doing school? How are you like your friends? Or if we go to the category of 13 and 14 years old, we can see profiles start to diversify. So as we move up in age, the measures of family mediation start to vary. So now we can see that the 50%, profile of, the revelation goes down to 20%, that protection level. And you can see the both two profiles that have less in levels are, you can see that revelation, that someone that reveals very little, but it could be probably the most at risk, because not only the individual teenager doesn't reveal much, but then it might be a family where there are much or many boundaries and limits, but less supervision and less mediation, so it could be a more authoritarian household. Here, when we move up to 15 to 16 years old, this seems to be coherent with essential or essential and evolutionary categories. The profile that reveals more seems more autonomous and has less levels of restriction. And they have protection, even if they're the old ones, they reveal very little. If they see that their family supports them less or pays less attention to them regarding how to do well in a virtual environment. So the lack of protection would not be probably the right thing to do. So with these profiles, we want to move in this following way, and to answer this research question, that is something that we're going to work for now. So the question is, in each age group, are there differences in the level of implication in the 4 C's, and within it, cyberbullying and other risks, and its relation with well-being according the mediation profile of the family, considering, in addition, gender. So we want to know what the role of the family is or in terms of implication and its impact. So now we have, reflected on the role that the family has regarding awareness of risks and behavior, but what happens with the digital practices of families? Something that we're going to delve into starting now, that has to do with negative modeling. There's been more and more publishing regarding, on occasions, how parental digital practices are, counteractive and negative, and they go against the model, and even, might violate some of the young people's rights, like exposure through images on the social media, or even in trending, exposing them to, the ridicule or, embarrassment. So here we can see some of the literature regarding different trends and lack of effective communication, and what happens in the relationship, because the implications of what they're doing, like if there's an interaction and parents or families are looking at the device instead of looking at their young children, and there's something that is not happening here, this quality in the relationships. And we are parenting. It's another of the variables that we have introduced here. And this phenomenon has to do with this exposure that we talked about. So if we have a certain, previous evidence from our research and our colleagues that have done it, but I would like to share that social norms of family are also important. You'll see, for example, how disapproval of violence and the expectation is that when a young person is observing violence actions, so the parents can intervene. and also be observing, the, behavior of their children to reject any cyberbullying or aggressive behavior. What are we doing next? From the evidence that's available and the latest, advances and that we've been working in the last project and the experience that we have regarding psychoeducational intervention with families, with official programs such as, and here in Spain, and also the acknowledgement of cyberbullying based on stigma here. And so we're going to generate a course that's called Be Safe with the intention of making families more confident digitally, understanding that they not only need to know what, they need to know, they need to be, aware of the risks. And so they need to, we need to help them to diversify family mediation strategies because it's not only important that they have information, but mediation. We also need them to strengthen their digital parenting, and they will become models. And we have to address their own, beliefs and their actions, and we're going to work in that line to make parents and families, confident. Thank you very much for your attention.
Muchas gracias, Esperanza.
Thank you so much, Esperanza. It was your research and your presence here with us is very important. And we thank everyone for being here today, and we hope that you all have a very good day.
Gracias. Hasta luego.
Gracias.
Goodbye.